Roxy, last time we were speaking, I said young black men taking a black woman as a partner is hovering at around 50-50. Do you think these young black men being raised by single black mothers has anything to do with their choice in their women?
When we posted our conversation last time, there's a couple of comments that came through, and I wanted to read one because I thought it was really quite powerful. We did go back and forth quite a bit, so forgive me, I'm scrolling through. It says, I think trauma can make anyone make a choice that will potentially change the course of their lives. Yes, being raised by a single woman can affect the choice a man makes when choosing a woman. It can be a choice to go completely against what they saw in their mother, or choose someone that does have a lot of their mother's natures, good or bad. In saying that, I believe we all have a choice, and if a person is self-reflective enough and consciously questions why they make any decisions, which is what I was saying just now, they may step away from the norm and make a choice in their partner that is reflective of who they are and what they see as a perfect partner, rather than all the other influences. This person who's DM'd me now has sort of captured a lot of what we've addressed. It's the fact that, yes, being raised by a single mum can have an effect on a choice that a person makes. We won't discount that. But at the same time, it comes to a point where if somebody's ready to make those decisions, then they've got to ask themselves why. And, you know, if somebody is hurt and running away from what they know, then that's a toxic decision. You know, decisions made in hurt, anger, any sort of negative state, it's a toxic decision. You need to be able to have your mind straight, you're emotionally, spiritually, everything, you're intact, you got your head screwed on. So it means whatever decision you make is going to have an impact that is potentially going to have the result you're looking for. And if it doesn't go the way you want it to, you're still in the right position to manage it. If you're negative, then there's a chance that it's going to have a negative impact on you in the long run, and it's not worth it. It's a bit presumptuous to just leave it at, you know, because a black man is raised by a single black woman, he no longer wants to be with a black woman. I think the way this day and age is now, people have become very open-minded. People become very ready to travel and explore new cultures. So it's not necessarily that because they were raised by a single black woman that they would prefer not to be with a black woman. Preference is a very big thing. There's different factors like where someone is raised, in terms of what environment. You know, if you've not lived in urban London your whole life, maybe you've lived outside London where the majority of the population is white or not black, you might be attracted to people that you're used to. If you're somebody who is open-minded and is more attracted to like compatibility and energy and, you know, that kind of thing, then you might be open to anybody, not necessarily just limited to black people. You might want to, you know, interact with different types of people. But there is something to be said about some black men who have been traumatized being in that kind of environment, raised by a single black woman who hasn't had dad around.
What do you mean traumatized?
Well, in the sense that maybe, you know, they've had a negative experience in the home. Mum's been stressed out, tired, always working, not there very often, having to try and make ends meet. Dad hasn't been around. So maybe his perception of black women is usually connected to struggling, or usually connected to being sort of emotionally disproportionate to whatever is going on, not able to connect on an emotional level with the child. So that might put a bad taste in the child's mouth as they grow older. So I just think there's so many different factors that, to be fair, it would be wrong not to look at the traumatic side, but then there's also the less traumatic side where somebody just has a preference.
The reason why I asked that question, is because what I see from my research is when people are looking to take a partner, both male and female, whether it be subconsciously or consciously, they look for their parent. So a lot of girls will say, they kind of want a man like their dad. If they've got like a good relationship with their dad,
they
want a guy who's a little bit like their dad. And a lot of guys will say, my mum was good, like I want a woman that's kind of like my mum.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the reason why I asked the question. Do you know what I mean? I just think it's a question because I know for me personally, having the relationship that I have with my mum, I was actually looking for, subconsciously, a woman that had her traits and had her behaviors. Mm-hmm. And so when it was time for me to find a woman, I subconsciously, when I look back on it now, was looking for a woman that had the same kind of traits. Mm-hmm. So if you're looking for a woman, generally, I think it might be Freudian, I don't know, don't quote me, that says, listen, the traits that you look for in your lifetime partner will mirror some of the traits that you find in your parents. Subconsciously or consciously, we look for partners that mirror our parents. Mm-hmm. A lot of black men, 65-70%, raised by single black women, but about half of them choose not to take a black woman as a partner. And is that upbringing influencing their choice in partner? Mine didn't. Mm-hmm. I was raised by a black woman. I still chose to find a black woman as a partner. My relationship with my mother was a great relationship. Mm-hmm.
So when you say influencing, you're referring to the idea that you're leaning more towards them not choosing black partners. Mm-hmm. That's what you're homing in on, that part of it there.
Mm-hmm. Do black women have anything to do with that? Mm. And the way in which they raise their boys. Mm. Now, that's not to say that a black man who is not in the house doesn't also have influence on his decision. Because a black family unit, if you saw a black family unit growing up, then you may be more inclined to build another black family unit.
Right.
But I'm saying because they're left with the mothers, because the fathers also have a role in this too, do you know what I mean?
Yes.
But because of the way the mothers were raising them, do you think that would have an influence on them?
And this is what I'm saying. I think there comes a time where, especially if a man is at the age where they're able to pick partners for themselves, if we're talking lifelong, long-term relationships, not necessarily the exploration stage where, you know, you're figuring yourself out and you're happy to dabble in any and everything. When it's time to actually settle down and have a family, I'm hopeful that at that point, the man has had enough introspection to make a decision for himself and take responsibility for his own decisions.
Right.
I think it's unfair to, especially if the preference is for, because I suppose the other side of the argument is that even a problem? Is it an issue if they decide that, if a black man decides he doesn't want to be with a black woman? You know, is it a problem? If it is, then I would say that for a black woman to have to take responsibility for that as well, I just find...
Do you know why I would say is it a problem?
Yeah, go on.
I'll tell you why I say it's a problem. Mm-hmm. In my experience, black women, majority of black women want a black man as a partner.
Okay.
So it's a problem for black women.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like, would you agree or not agree? Your ideal preference partner, would it be a black male?
I'll speak for myself, yes.
Right, okay, so you represent most black women. When it comes to statistics, most black women want a black male as a partner. There are ones that don't, which is fine, but I'm saying the majority do. So if the majority of black women want a black man as a partner, but then maybe half the black men are taking partners outside of black women, that's a problem for black women, right?
Okay.
Do you get what I'm saying?
I do get what you're saying.
Right. So my thing is, looking back, I'm just going to go a little bit somewhere else now.
All right, go on.
I'm going to go a little bit somewhere else. Do you think that the relationship between black men and black women is caused by both parties? Because black men get a lot of black men are this, they leave, they do that, absent fathers. Mm-hmm. Do you think it's a joint thing, or or is it blame? Or is the blame goes on either one or the other sex? The breakdown of the black family unit.
That's a tricky question, just because there are so many nuances and so many factors to that. A breakdown of a relationship can come about because of so many different reasons. If two people aren't compatible or aren't meant to be together, then that could be that could be detrimental from the start. You know, it was doomed to fail from the start, especially if certain things weren't put in place in the first place, like making sure you're on the same page, making sure you both want the same things in life, having the same aims and goals for the family. If those sorts of conversations aren't happening in the first place, then there is going to be a breakdown later on down the line. I just think that when it comes to the sort of the wider view of a relationship between black men and black women in general, I just feel like there isn't enough. We're not united enough as a people. I feel like there's so much competition amongst ourselves that we can't even see the good in ourselves to even band together.
Do you feel black men have let black women down?
I do feel like that. If I'm allowed to use my own experience as an example, all of the headache and issue and drama that I've had in a relationship has been with black guys. But
that's relationships though, isn't it?
Well, I'm calling them relationships. It's interactions in general.
Is it specifically because they are black, or is it just because they are men? Do you know what I mean? Like,
well, I can't really say because I've not dated outside of my race.
Right.
So in that sense, I can accept that I'm a bit narrow-minded in that area because all I know is black men.
Do you know, I think one of the problems, sorry to cut your wisdom, yeah? Do you know what I think one of the problems is that because due to our traumatic experiences, yeah, a lot of the time we tend to group each other in and say, okay, black men, if I have a bad experience with a black woman or bad experience with a black woman, that means black women are X.
Which is the problem.
Black women will say, if I have bad experiences with black men, that means black men are X. And I don't necessarily think, I don't know, I don't have an insight into the community, but I don't think Chinese men and Chinese women operate the same. They don't say, oh, I've had 5 Chinese guys and she's a Chinese woman and they've done X to me, so all Chinese men are blah, 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 blah. And I don't think I don't think Asian people operate the same. So my thing is, why is it when it comes to us that we think...
Well, this is the thing. I can only speak for what I know. Like you rightly suggested, I don't know anything about any other culture. I am West African. That's the culture I know. And you can only experience something so many times before it starts to become a stereotype, before it starts to become how you judge it so you can survive it. You have to categorize things in certain ways. So if I'm going through the same things over and over again, even though it's not the same black man, it's different black guys, my experience has been such that really, if I really want to advise myself, I should be saying no more of this. That's enough.
So do you think that like black men don't show black women love? Is that what you're trying to get at?
I feel like there's a
disconnect.
There's a disconnect.
Right. I would agree with you.
There's a disconnect. And what's unfortunate about it is no one knows a black man like a black woman. But I just feel like there's some contempt there because...
on the male side?
Yeah.
For black women?
Yeah. Because it's like, it's almost as if black men, I'm generalizing very crudely, but it's almost as if black men take it for granted that we're all from the same culture or we all have the same history. So it's almost like they don't have to make the effort because we're all in it together, if that makes sense. I've seen, in my own personal experience, I've seen black men date outside of their race who have had black ex-girlfriends, and the ex-girlfriends are looking at these guys like, is this the same guy? Now, there's nothing, don't get me wrong, there's, such a thing as the one, when a man is ready to settle down. Maybe at that time he wasn't ready to settle down.
Do you think black men switch differently when they get a partner that's not black? Is that what you're saying?
That's the impression they give us.
Right.
That's the impression they give us. I feel like there's so much that can be done to support black women, but when they get the opportunity, again, crudely generalizing, because I know there are a group of black men who would actually stand for us as sisters, but I've heard it too many times. There was one time I was actually in my car listening to a radio show where this guy had clearly had a preference No judgment there.
For who?
For he's a black guy on the radio talking about his preference for white women, and I've got no issue with that. But I take issue when your preference is white women and you are dogging black women to prove that point. That to me is detrimental and it doesn't help. You're allowed to like who you like, but you don't need to hate us to do it. Meanwhile, whenever there's an issue when it comes to black men, the black women are on the front line. We will be marching with you. We will be shouting and chanting with you. We will be there for you. But it's like you don't give us that same backing. So when people are insulting us as black women, black men just, well, she can firm it, innit? She can handle it. It's not my problem. And then it's as if, oh, it's just girls chatting. I'm not interested. But we're there to ride for you. So a friend earlier mentioned that there's a post that Baller Alert put on their page, and it referred to white women having a conversation. Somebody had snapped a chat, and it's unfortunately gone viral, where these women were talking about how broken black men are and how they can basically have their way with them and do what they want with them.
So this group chat full of white girls leaked, and they were talking about like sleeping with black men, and this is the shit that they said. You see that? Black guys would do anything to be with a white girl. It's kind of pathetic. The screenshot said, if I tell a black boy I want to pee in his mouth, he will let me. No way with a white guy. Black guys have low self-esteem and love us. Oh, babes, they're not embarrassed for what they said. Like, they said what they said. They're embarrassed for being caught. Behold, an apology, quote unquote, from one of them. And she literally said some dumb shit like, it wasn't our intention to sound racist.
Sorry, the white women were saying
they were having this conversation
with black men.
Right. And the comments underneath were basically like, ladies, stand down, you know, don't get involved in this one. When it's time for them to ride, when it's time for the man them to ride for us, they don't. So it's time for them to stand up for themselves. So this is, and that's the unfortunate disconnect, because speaking as somebody who, and I'm sure there's a majority of us like this that have unconditional love for black men, because let's face it, we come from black men, right? Our fathers, our brothers, our uncles, we have love and respect for black men in general. But when it comes to us actually building a life with a black man, that disconnect doesn't allow us to, we can't bridge the gap.
Okay, so, all right.
And it just feels like, what more can a woman do to show that they ride for their fellow black man?
First of all, I would say, for me, this conversation, that we're having right now about this is probably a conversation that black men and black women have had behind closed doors.
Sure, fair enough.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Secondly, for me, I think that it's a conversation that needs to be had in a space of understanding first.
Yes.
And love second. I feel like a lot of the time when black men and black women come together to speak about their issues, it's but you women,
exactly.
But you men.
Yes.
Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It gets to a point where it's too combative.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so if we don't have this conversation by saying, look, I love you, you love me. Yeah. We're for one another. Yeah. I want to see the best for you, you want to see the best for me. Can we have a conversation? Can we have this dialogue without it being combative?
Right.
That's first of all. Second of all, when it comes to the disconnect that black men and black women have, I as a black man, because you can probably tell me as a black woman what it looks like from your side. So I as a black man feel like a lot of black women have fed into a narrative of independency, let's say unwanted behavior that black men see. So I'll flesh it out a bit.
Please do.
I'll flesh it out.
Yeah.
If we look at the modern day black woman in the Western world, it's okay for her to put on a pair of shorts, twerk to her heart's content, while screaming about how it's progressive and feminist, and this is cool. Now, I've always said, that's not all black women, by the way. But I've said to myself, but at some point in time, I'm sure you're going to want like a partner. That black woman's going to probably want a long-term partner at some point in time. And she has to maybe ask herself, what type of black man is she going to get?
Right.
If that is her MO. If that's what she does and she feels like that's cool and that's jiggy, there's black women opening OnlyFans and showing up their bodies to everyone and anyone. We live in a generation where quote unquote feminism, this is just from my point of view, feminism has taken over, and progressive thinking, whatever that is, and aggressive feminism has taken over the black woman's psyche. And so as a black man who's looking for a black woman, yeah, I'm looking at them and I'm like, nah, I don't want that. I don't want that for my wife.
So when you said unwanted behavior, where is it explicitly clear that it's not wanted? Because it's from my perspective, this is all I see, and this is what seems to be celebrated. I see black men using black women like this in their videos, for example.
Right.
I see black men liking pictures like this on Instagram. I see people celebrating the women who do this. So what part of it is unwanted? Because there's a group of us women who actually
I'm going to read something.
Won't do that, potentially because we can't do that, but we won't do it. So I'm like, those of us that I'll speak for myself and anybody like me, those of us who come from a place of faith and a place of, maintaining some sort of dignity and self-respect, I don't want everyone to see my bum online. I don't want everyone to see me winding up on the wall. I don't want people to see me like that. So what part of this behavior is unwanted if it's celebrated so much?
This is where we get into the duality of men, which women have the same duality, I feel, which is fantastic. We're having this conversation. So men aesthetically, will see a woman that is aesthetically pleasing to our eye and be like, whoa, that's great. But we also have another box. As we say that, we're like, that is fantastic. It's like seeing a stripper at a club. We see a stripper, we're like, yeah, but that stripper's not going to be wife. It's not going to be our wife.
Okay.
That's just, we can appreciate that stripper for what she is. And that brings me to another conversation. Do you think that quote unquote bad behavior, is more rewarded in the current society that we live in than say wholesome behavior? So we got to look at that argument. Like do you know what I mean? Like if bad behavior is more, it's rewarded more so.
Well, I think it's definitely hyper glamorized.
Right. Okay.
I think if you're somebody who, it looks as though trapping, food, fraud, all of that kind of thing is holding up the luxury market. And if you're a big baller, chances are you're going to be doing something illegal to make the money. This is the image that is put out there. Don't get me wrong. There are people who work very hard. There are people that make money doing legitimate business, and there are people who make money doing like playing football or using their gifts legitimately and being rewarded for it. So those people I discount. I'm not talking about them. I'm talking about a group of people that have made a lot of good money doing things that actually on a normal day they'd probably be arrested for. So I feel like it does get glamorized quite a bit. And for weaker, impressionable minds, you might get the impression, or they might get the impression that this is the way to go. It's quick, it's easy. You get what you're looking for. You get the image you're trying to portray. You get the, do you know what I mean? Like so when you talk about rewards, it all depends on the reason why you go into it, or the reason why you would dabble in the so-called bad behavior. Even
to say bad behavior is more rewarded. So you like twerking, showing your
from the sexual side.
From the sexual side.
Okay.
And then the male side is the criminal element. Like the black male side that's more rewarded. If you're more of a criminal, we'll gas you up a little bit more. We want to know how many people you stabbed, how many times you've gone to prison, how many times you bust a gun. You know what I'm saying? And a woman on her side, is how many guys you've had sex with, how good your vagina is. Do you get what I'm saying? Like how you can dance and all this kind of stuff. So do you feel like in this days and times, on both of our sides, the bad behavior, is more rewarded on both of our sides? Because, okay, cool. A good guy, so I'm just going to flesh this out a bit. So a good guy, whatever that is, yeah, a good guy will see a woman, like her, and then a woman, from my experience, a lot of women, not all women, yeah, I want a nice guy. I want a good guy. You get him, he's too nice. What's that? I thought that's what you wanted.
I've heard that said before.
Because a thing that is rewarded, yeah, subconsciously and consciously, is the bad behavior. So when you're too nice, it's like, you're a little bit boring, or you're a little bit.
I've heard that said before,
I mean?
But to me, somebody who is happy to accept toxicity and drama is probably needing a little bit of help. Do you know what I mean?
Has toxicity and drama become part of our daily life?
I think it's been accepted a lot more, yes. I do think that people have started making room for it because dealing with it is too hard. People would rather live with it and accept it than address it and get rid of it. So I think if you're somebody who is looking for a peaceful life, you're not going to have that with somebody that's on the roads, because that's not a peaceful life by definition. But at the end of the day, if you're in a because we're in the culture and society now where we're seeing a lot more of that on TV, you know, we're seeing a lot more people who were on the roads now taking a different turn and maybe getting into industries that mean that they can live a normal life, but they're still real about where they're from and they're still real about their story. It's just that they've come out on the other side and they're able to do positive things as a result. I've got nothing but time for that, you know, because it's at the end of the day, you've made a decision to change the trajectory. You don't have to end up in a box or in the bin, right? But then at the same time, there are some people that you will find, like they're online, for example, because we're very much online nowadays. People are online glamorizing, showboating, making it seem as though the teardrops under their eye makes them the hot thing. But actually, for someone like me, that's complete no-go.
Yeah, but can we go back to, you see when you talk about toxicity being the norm, yeah? So I have someone who's very close to me who was with their woman for 20 plus years, yeah, about 20 years. You know what he said to me? He said, Sarah, I can count on one hand how many times I've argued with my missus.
Okay.
Right? And I was astounded. I was like, what? You don't argue? He said, no, I don't argue. I said, what do you mean? He said, if I have a discrepancy with my woman and she has a discrepancy with me, we have a conversation about it. It doesn't mean we're not going to agree. It doesn't mean we're going to agree all the time. We may disagree, right? But we can have a conversation. And I feel like a lot of the interaction between relationships right now is that we feel like toxic behavior is the norm. Like, so argument, he doesn't love you if he doesn't argue with you. He may not even love, I've heard women say he may not even love you if he doesn't put his hands on you.
Oof.
I've heard women say this. He can't really be that passionate about the relationship if he doesn't get jealous and he doesn't grapes you up and grip you up. And I'm just like, me, the way I'm built, I'm just
shout out to those girls. Wow.
I really ain't got time for that. Do you know what I mean? Like, if you want that kind of drama, I'm gonna be at the door. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, that's just me. Do you know what I'm saying? But I'm just like, toxicity, whether it be drug dealing, trapping, twerking, it's just become part and parcel of the day's life between black men and black women. Like, I'm talking about the glamorization of it.
Okay.
And a lot of us feed into that psychology. Most black people are not drug dealers. Do you know what I'm saying? Most black people are not into bad behavior.
Yeah.
Most of us aren't. But that's what's glamorized. And so a lot of us feed into that psychology. Does that make sense? I think a lot of us...
Subconsciously.
Yeah, subconsciously. We feed into that psychology and we feel like, okay, that's the way a relationship should be, or that's the way we should be one another. I feel like black men and black women, I'm going to round off now. Black men and black women need to have conversations like this, which are just open and honest. Like I said, a lot of the time we don't have these conversations because they get a little bit too combative.
Yeah.
They get a little bit too emotional. I'm just glad that I can say my piece, you can say yours, and be like, all right, cool, let's talk about it.
I just really wish that there was a forum where, like you said, you know, there's room for understanding each other. Because I feel like we've come a very long way since, I mean, my grandma and my granddad never needed to have this conversation. There was a level of understanding because the culture had a particular way of operating amongst itself, if that makes sense. So I feel like we've evolved in technology and our ways of thinking, and you know, we've come such a long way. It's unfortunate that we've left some of those really beautiful things behind in an effort to survive, to make the most of the journey that we're on. But we've become so siloed and so individual that we can't connect with each other anymore. And I just feel like we need to go back to the beginning and try and understand each other, because there's so much to be gained from us coming together than us constantly warring with each other. As a woman, I'm not in competition with you, and as a man, you're not in competition with me. We're meant to come together. So I would really love to see more types of conversations like this, where people can actually say, this is where I'm coming from, this is where you're coming from.
Last thing then, what can black men do to help heal black women? And what can black women do to help heal black men? Whoa! Hey, 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 hey. What? Hey!
I'm gonna cut it there. Right?
What did you mean, that one? The cooker? Is that what you meant? Bro, this is the cooker, not a wall. Idiot boy. That's the wall, you fool. These are some of the
things. Damn it, for heaven's sake.
Sit in the grey chair. They're both fucking grey, bro.
I'm out.
Idiots. I exhibit
all the way from here to Asia.
Olashi Buruku. Bombo chase. Olashi Buruku. Olashi Buruku. I don't question your cameraman capabilities, your videographer capabilities, your editing capabilities, your cinematic capabilities.
Hello.
Yeah?
Thesaurus.
Don't question my chop and screw capabilities.
Chop and screw.
Question your life.
Go fuck yourself.
What is this?
Go learn about your
girl and make her feel nice.
Hey!
Who? We don't want to idiot girl in here.